Okay, welcome to part 2 of Text Talk Day 1 for Unit 4 in our Pollen and Pollinators unit. Here's your vocabulary for the week. The words are flicker and gasp and scorched and flashy and ability and inspire and root and hook and contain and scatter. So you're going to look for those, and you'll see those words throughout the reading for the rest of the week. Here's your I can statements for the week today. I can describe how the main character responds to major events. So you're going to figure out how the characters in the book, the main character in the book, what he or she does when something happens, when major things happen. I can recount key events and describe character development to demonstrate my understanding of the story. That's a mouthful, huh? That means you'll be able to retell the important parts and describe how the character changes as a person from beginning to end, to just show someone that you understood what happened in the story. You're going to look for these words today. Flicker, which is a verb, an action word, which means to move in and out or quiver. So you might think of like a light bulb that's about to burn out. It goes zzz, zzz, zzz. Also, a butterfly might flicker in and out of your vision. So it could be two things. And gasp, which is another action word. It means to breathe in quickly due to shock or surprise. What's that? Flickering. So here's our new unit of study. We're starting today. For the next several weeks, we'll be learning about pollination and pollinators. And pollination is what happens when pollen moves from flower to flower in order for a plant to reproduce or make a new plant. So the pollen goes from the inside of this flower and makes its way to a similar flower on a different plant in order for it to create a new seed and make a new plant. We'll learn all about that in the next couple of weeks. Pollinators are insects and other animals that move the pollen, like bees. Pollinators and plants are interdependent, which means that one depends on the other. So if you look in this picture, here's this bee. The bee needs the flower, but also the flower needs the bee. So the bee comes here and collects nectar. But in the process, these little yellow grains of pollen stick to the bee, and then he flies away, and goes to the next plant, where then the pollen falls off and pollination occurs. They are interdependent. The flower needs the bee to move the pollen to the next plant. Before we focus on that, though, we're going to start learning about plants and their seeds. So seeds are important. Today we'll read a book called Cuckoo, adapted by Lois Ehlert. This book is an adaptation of a Mayan Indian tale from Mexico. The illustrations were inspired by a variety of different Mexican crafts and folk art, and you'll see that the use of collage, and I have some collage behind me that we made a few months ago, and we hung up them on the walls anyway, so that's kind of fun. I'll put some opportunities for you to try to do some collage in the classroom. You can check that out. You'll see that this is done. The art in here is done with collage, but you'll see as we read. Here's Mexico. Mexico is one of three countries which borders, one of three countries in North America. So here's the continent of North America. And up top in the north, you have the country of what? Canada. And then here in the middle, you have the country of what? The United States. And then here is Mexico. Well, this is interesting. This is not all Mexico. That map's messed up. But this is Mexico for sure here. So what you're seeing here, this is actually Arizona. This is Texas. And this is California over here, above this black border line. This natural border is the Rio Grande River. And I forget, somebody had mentioned last week why don't they always just have something like that to show the borders between countries? Well, a lot of times they do. They decide, this is yours, this is mine, based on what nature put there. In this case, the Rio Grande River. And so Mexico borders the United States to the south. It goes more like this. Something like that. Okay. Oh, here's the Mexican flag. It's pretty cool. This is an eagle eating a snake, and you can look up that history if you want. Google Mexican flag story. I bet you'll see a nice story about why they have an eagle eating a snake sitting on a cactus. The Mayan Civilization. So the Mayan people lived on what is now Mexico, the Yucatan Peninsula, they call this, and from the time of 2200 BC all the way up until almost 1700 now times. So long time. And then, so if you look, this part is Mexico, the Yucatan Peninsula. This is Guatemala. This is Belize. And the Mayans lived all in this area here. And they had a huge civilization, and they built pyramids like this one, which you can still find in the jungles of Mexico and Central America. People are still discovering them. They're covered with dirt. They're covered in jungle at this point because they're so old and abandoned for so long, but they're still out there and they still are standing up. The Mayans lived in what is now Mexico and Guatemala from 1000 BC until 1697. Read this. They had a very complex language system. Their alphabet had over 80 sounds. They were master calendar makers. No, it was a written alphabet as well. They had all kind of writing, completely different than the writing and the characters, the letters that are common in our languages, in Spanish or English or French or whatever. They use the same letters. They had a different letter system. Does that make sense? Like a Chinese or a Japanese or different Sanskrit. They were master calendar makers and understood the path of the sun, the moon, and the stars in ways that we still use today. So if we think about, like, we had the spring equinox, the spring solstice the other day, on this temple in the spring, I think it's this one, there's some kind of sculpture on it, and when the light hits it on the day of the equinox, it makes it look like there's a snake that slithers down the front of the snake shadow. It makes a shadow that looks like a snake sliding down the path. I think that was in a video we may have watched. Pretty cool. So they understood the calendar in ways that we still use today, for mapping the moon and the stars and the full moons and stuff. The Mayans kept bees for making honey. They were beekeepers. And they also were some of the first people to figure out how to turn cacao bean into chocolate. So that's pretty cool. They were some of the inventors of chocolate, like we learned about in Brazil, right? I wonder if they taught each other. We're going to read Cuckoo today. Cuckoo is an adaptation of a Mayan tale from Mexico. The illustrations were inspired by a variety of different Mexican crafts and folk art, art made by people, right? In this book, the bird cuckoo does an important task. Today, we will read to find out how she responds to events in the book. Cuckoo, cuckoo. And yes, Cuckoo by Lewis L. Notice it is in English and in Spanish, so cuckoo or cuckoo. Here is some Mexican folk art. Cuckoo, un cuento folclórico mexicano, a Mexican folklore. Cuckoo. It's translated into Spanish by Gloria de Aragon Andújar. So we look at some of these Spanish words you might know. Sun or sol. We have dog or perro. Corn or elote. Pepper, pimiento. Heart, corazón. Corazón. I love that. Very beautiful Spanish word. You can learn those, read them. You can make some of these if you want. Cuckoo was beautiful. Trouble was, she knew it. This book has an interesting start. I wonder why it might be a problem that Cuckoo knows she's pretty. How could that be a problem? How is it a problem if somebody knows that they're pretty? She knew it. That's a problem. She's pretty and she knew it. Cuckoo's pretty, cawed one parrot. Pretty lazy, said the others. Never helps us collect seeds. She's stuck on herself. All day long, Cuckoo flew and sang, cuckoo, cuckoo, pretty, sweet, sweet, sweet. Flowers opened to her lovely song. Roosters nearby stopped crowing, and dogs forgot to bark. She's very pretty. But even the sweetest song can turn sour. Shoo, Cuckoo, we're tired of you and your singing too, cooed the doves. Cuckoo, stop singing and go to sleep, hooted Owl. He was the bird boss. Early tomorrow we start our seed collecting. So looking at the parrots, looking at the dove, looking at the owl, how do other animals and birds respond to Cuckoo? What do they think about her and her prettiness? Ugh. I'm Cuckoo, I'm so pretty, right? Each year, after the field plants dried, the birds collected beans and corn and pepper, squash and tomato seeds, and dropped them on Mole's Hill. Those seeds would be planted later to grow for another season. I'm thinking again. What's important to the birds as a group? What are they trying to do? It says, each year after the field plants dried, the birds collected beans and corn and pepper, squash and tomato seeds, and dropped them on Mole's Hill. Those seeds will be planted later to grow for another season. How do you think the seeds that the birds collect are going to connect to our studies in this unit? What does that have to do with pollen and pollinators? The birds fell asleep, dreaming of seeds. Even Owl was napping. Cuckoo soon got bored singing to herself. As she dipped down to her branch, something red flickered through the trees. What's that? She muttered. Some flashy new bird? Better chase it away. She wants to be the prettiest one in the forest. But it wasn't a bird. It was a field fire, and Mole was out. He had smelled smoke. As Cuckoo flew from the woods, Mole shouted, "Can you save the seeds?" pointing to his tunnel. He said, "You can drop them in here." So here's Mole. Here's his hill. Look at this is his tunnel here. He's saying, "Save the seeds, drop them in my tunnel." What's happening in this part of the book? What do you think Cuckoo's going to do? What do you think Cuckoo will do? Will she help Mole? Will she not? Let's find out. There was no time to wake the other birds. Red flames were licking higher, coming closer and closer. So Cuckoo began. It was a hot and scary job. Her rainbow feathers became scorched from fire, her eyes flame red from smoke. From the fiery fields to the cool woods, Cuckoo flew, carrying seeds to Mole's tunnel all night long. At sunrise, Cuckoo dropped the last ear of corn down Mole's tunnel. Tired but happy, she started to sing. But cuckoo, cuckoo was all that came out of her smoky throat. What has Cuckoo done? Is it similar or different from how we would have expected her to act? Based on what we knew about her from before, is she behaving differently now? What did she do? The birds woke up to Cuckoo's raspy cry. They gasped when they saw the blackened fields. The seeds were gone. No seeds left to plant meant no food for later. Then they saw a scorched bird circling above. "Is that you, Cuckoo?" called the doves. "Eres tú, Cuckoo?" llamaron las palomas. The birds waited for Cuckoo to land. When she told them that the seeds were safe, they all clapped their wings, and they all agreed in the end, you can't tell much about a bird by looking at its feathers. The birds waited for Cuckoo to land. When she told them that the seeds were safe, they all clapped their wings, and they all agreed in the end, you can't tell much about a bird by looking at its feathers. Now's the time to take out your notebook and your pencil. I want you to think about this. In your notebook, write an answer to these questions. What does Cuckoo do at the end of the book? How is her reaction different than what we expected? What does you can't tell much about a bird by looking at its feathers mean to you? Stop the video here. Just push the pause button and see if you can answer these 3 questions in your notebook. What does Cuckoo do at the end of the book? How is her reaction different than what you expected? What does you can't tell much about a bird by looking at its feathers mean to you? So if you can write that in your notebook, that would be great. So pause it here and we'll meet in a minute. Done? Good. Today we read to find out how the main character, Cuckoo, reacted to main events and a big problem. When you read stories on your own, you should always track the major events and the main character's response. Tomorrow, we will try to understand what makes this book a folk tale and what the central message of the folk tale is. So we're going to talk about a genre, folk tale. And I guess that's it. So I hope you liked the story about Cuckoo, and you can look forward to pollen and pollinators. And that's it. So see you guys later. Bring your notebooks with your answers to your next conversation with your teachers and see if you can share your answers.